in the book of Genesis, I learned that it is not good for a man to be alone. But now that we're talking about polygamy, two is definitely a crowd. How did that come about?
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. Indeed, the Bible says that it is not good for a man to be alone. And so God created a wife for a man. You know. And if you look at Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, verse 24, I think that is when God is declaring the marriage. But when you come to Genesis chapter 3, things became abnormal. You know, sin came into the world. There was a fall.
Yeah.
And so in Genesis chapter 4, we are getting the first instance of polygamy, where Lamech is now taking two wives for himself. Yeah. So I can say that, So I can say that it is as a result of the fall. Yeah.
Are there polygamous families in your church?
Very many.
Very many.
Yes.
You've accepted that.
Just like I'm saying, it's a result of a fall. And you know, a church is not where all good people come. It's a place where everybody should come and everybody should find help.
What is a church stand? What is their stand on matters polygamy?
I think the stand of the church is actually the stand of the Bible. If every church member or church leader will be given an opportunity to give a direction, they will insist for monogamy. They will insist for one wife. Yeah.
Okay. Grace.
Yes.
Let's move away from the Bible to what's happening on the ground. The Boda rider who's watching me, the Mama Githeri who's watching me, the middle class, working class who's watching the show this morning. They probably want to hear your understanding of what a polygamous arrangement, a polygamous marriage is all about.
Yeah.
Tell me your textbook definition, experience definition. You've been a therapist. I want to hear you out.
Okay. A polygamous family is really a man with more than one wife. He has one wife, two wives. I mean, the first family, as we would say it, and then there are several other families, or even one more family. Now, traditionally, we would say that that we have a husband who has one wife, and then he marries a second and a third, and however many he has.
Yes.
In our social setting at the present time, we are having another form of polygamy, which is not structured. So because a lot of people now, we go by what the Bible says, because the Bible is also being seen in our laws, that if you have more than one wife legally, you are being bigamous, or you're practicing bigamy. And so we have the traditional polygamy, and then we have these other subsets. I call them subsets because if you have a family and you have another, what I hear people calling clandestine family.
Clandestine.
Clandestine.
Clandé.
Yes. So I'm married, but I have no idea that my husband has another family elsewhere. Or I come to find out, and there is a family there. So that is the situation we are living in. Not to mention mpango wa kando. You know, people have mistresses around, and children are being birthed there. So we definitely are living in a time where polygamy is our reality, even though it is not necessarily the technical way that we know polygamy.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the way I see it.
But let's look at traditionally. From what I understand, because my grandfather had 4 wives. On my dad's side, he had 4 wives. On my mom's side, he had 5 wives. Now, I sat down and asked myself, okay, hang on a second. These are people who've lived so many years way ahead of me. Yeah. What could have been the factor that drove these old men then, when they were young, to have more than one wife?
Yeah, now, Pastor will talk about the spirituality of that, but I will say this. From what I know, studies and just experience within our community, we know that the reasons why people looked for multiple wives was also for status. labor, and labor force.
Labor force.
Yeah, so, and we know, even I have had stories in our Kikuyu tradition that the wife would actually look for a helper.
Yes.
Who would be the second wife to her husband, because she needs somebody. Because we had that time where the women were the ones who did the tilling of the land, taking care of the man's property.
Yeah.
So there is that, the labor force, and I also believe that there was a status kind of thing. And
Right.
also, even in the Bible, we are told about Solomon. Solomon did that to do treaties between him and other nations. So even, I think even in our African tradition, there was a part of that where the chief of one place would make peace, and the way that they would make peace is exchange of
So, Luke, Pastor Luke, tell me, so was Solomon really justified to have all those concubines?
Just like I said, maybe let me say that people haven't really realized the magnitude of what I call the fall.
The fall?
You know, the fall is where everything now falls into.
But he ended up becoming one of the wisest people the Bible has ever written about.
He did. And so like David had 8 of them, you know, and he was considered as a man after God's own heart. So
what is this fall we're talking about?
So, you know, one of the things that we need to be looking at, especially when we are alluding to the biblical examples of those who are in polygamy, we need to read their whole story. You know, if you look at their whole story and you look at their lives and their endings and their troubles, then you will really indeed see that polygamy was a social disaster, actually, for them.
For them?
Yes.